Hello and welcome to this MIMHtraining.com presentation on suicide prevention among the military and military families. My name is Tom Pansella and I'm with the Missouri Institute of Mental Health. We're joined today by Major General Mark Graham of the United States Army. I appreciate your being here today. General Graham and his wife have had a very difficult experience. They've actually lost 2 children already, both of whom were in military service, one of whom lost his life to suicide and one of whom died in combat. Since they've been grieving the loss of their sons, they've also been using the energy from that to present a message to other military families. And that message is that depression is a treatable illness. And we're going to talk a little bit about that with General Graham here. They've pledged to raise awareness in the military about untreated depression. They've also become advocates for soldiers who suffer with post-traumatic stress disorder, from traumatic brain injury, and other mental health related issues. Secretary of Defense Robert Gates recently nominated Major General Graham, who is a nationally renowned speaker, for Time Magazine's 100 Most Influential People. General Graham, thank you for being here, and thank you also for your years of service to our country.
Well, thanks, Tom. It's good to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to help others know about depression and mental illness. It truly is an illness and it's treatable, but you've got to know the warning signs to get in front of it to prevent people from taking their own life.
Well, let's start with a little bit of background. Do you have a feel for how prevalent the numbers are kind of with depression in the military?
Well, I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm an Army soldier, not a doctor. So what I tell you will just be my thoughts and what we've read and learned over the time. And sadly, we've learned more than we ever really wanted to know about it. But what we have learned is you need to know the warning signs. Suicide is the #2 cause of death in college-age students. Most people didn't know that. My wife and I did not know that. Our son was a senior ROTC cadet at the University of Kentucky when he died. He was going to be an Army doctor and was suffering from depression. And we didn't, we knew he was having some problems. We knew he had some depression, but frankly, we didn't know you could die from it. So in the military, we do see depression just like we do in society, because we are really a snapshot of society, and we see it. But what we're trying to do now is just to make sure people know the warning signs. We can get the help before it gets too bad, before it gets to the point where other influencers cause them to take their own life.
Who do you talk to? Who's your major audience?
Well, I talk to military audiences, and I also talk to a lot of civilian audiences. We've talked to several crisis line groups in states. 1-800-273-TALK is a national suicide hotline, and then anyone can call that number if they're in trouble, if they're in trauma. And what they do is they connect you from that number. They connect you to a regional crisis line, and regional crisis lines. And in many cases now, they have a military contact representative for their crisis line that allows you to get to the National Guard in the state or the Army Reserves, but also active duty as well. Because the Army Guard and the Army Reserve are spread out across the country, they serve and then they go to their hometowns, so that's a little tougher for us to take in the military to handle and make sure they get the proper care. So the telephone system works great. So the suicide hotline, and also there's a military OneSource website and phone number you can go to. So there are a lot of resources out there. One of our challenges is to help others know about the resources so they can get help, because there are so many ways to get help and support. But if you're in a crisis, or if you're depressed and really having a hard time, and you need someone to reach out to, if you don't know easily how to get to somebody, it could go the wrong direction very fast. So we want to make sure the word gets out, and we appreciate you doing this so that we can help tell people there is help out there. There are great professionals that can help you, whether you need medication or whether you need some counseling. But the stigma in our society says, "Oh, you have mental illness, something's wrong with you." Well, they don't think a thing about it if you're on blood pressure medicine or high cholesterol medicine, or if you're on heart medicine. But if you're on depression medicine, and so we've got to help change the culture in our country.
You've hit on several different things I think I'd like to explore with you here a little bit. You talked about some of the warning signs. What do you try to tell people about the warning signs? What are they looking for?
Well, if you're looking for, if you see a difference in behavior, if you know somebody, in the Army we call it your battle buddy. If you're around a soldier every day, if you see differences in their behavior, just like if a person, hey, that guy used to be a pretty happy guy or a pretty talkative guy, now he's very quiet, shy, and reserved. He or she they don't say much. if they start saying things like, well, I'm just dragging the unit down, or like, well, I don't really have any friends, I don't belong here, those kind of thoughts are really alarms. And what we found is if you had something wrong with you, a bad rash or something physical wrong with you, you wouldn't wait weeks and weeks to get help for it and to go get some medication or to go see someone about it, to tell them. But in this case, we tend to wait. Oh, you'll be okay. Just get some rest. Work out a little bit more. Get good sleep. Make sure you're eating right. Well, I got to tell you, eating right and working out more and all that, that's great. But if you've got depression, it's serious and it's an illness, and you need some care for that. You need either counseling to help you through some, it can be episodic, or if you've got a mental illness, you need some medication possibly to take care of it. So you need to see a professional.
And one of the other topics you touched on, we deal with a lot in the general public, and that's the stigma issue. What is the stigma like in the Army or in the military? Well,
great question. First, I think it's a national stigma. I mean, there's a stigma in the nation, but in the military, it's even more of a challenge. And our leadership, from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mullen, General Casey, the Chief of Staff of the Army, and General Corelli, our Vice Chief, we're working hard on this in the military. Secretary Gates has made this a priority. I mean, so we're working it hard in the military because there is a culture in the military of suck it up, tough guys, tough gal, let's go, Well, that's good, and we want that, and you want that in your military. But what we also want is for others to recognize, hey, these are folks too, and if they've got something going on, we need to get them help. We don't stop them from getting medication for other things, so why this? If it's not a harm to themselves or something else, of course, and that's why we got great medical care to do that. So the stigma is the biggest challenge, is people willing to go out and get help because they're worried about their career, they're worried about getting promoted. What's going to happen to me if somebody finds out? They'll think something's really wrong with me, and we just got to get beyond that. But it will take time, and I'll tell you, we wish we could just kind of wave our hand and say, okay, stigma's gone. It doesn't happen, as you know, that fast. So it will take time, but I think we're making progress. Not fast enough for most of us, but I think we are making some progress.
And how do you go about doing that? When you're working with groups, how are you going about doing that?
Well, doing what we're doing right here helps. Every time we can get out, and that's why I'm, as hard as this is sometimes to do, because I have lost 2 sons, and I'll tell you, every day, it's tough every day, and I take one day at a time. But what I tell people is just understand that if you've got a soldier that's gotten in trouble for alcohol or in trouble for drugs, granted, that's wrong, you got to take care of, you got to have good order and discipline. But we need to make sure we're looking deeper and saying, okay, is something else driving that alcohol use? Is there something more than that? Doesn't mean you condone the alcohol or the drug use at all, but we got to continue to not only help treat them for that, but also see, is there something deeper than that? Is there some depression somewhere? Is there something else going on in their life that we haven't seen that's causing that? And make sure we're helping a soldier. I often tell people, we put them in boots, they're part of the family. So once they're in boots and they're part of our family, we got to take care of them just like you do anybody in your family. We got to take care of them. We owe that to them. They volunteered to serve their nation in a time of war, frankly, and which is another amazing thing to say about young Americans is they're signing up in record numbers. People say, oh, it's the economy. Well, I got to tell you, even with the economy, they're signing up knowing probably where they're headed to Iraq or Afghanistan. So that says an awful lot about young people in our country.
It really does. I know that historically the military has done a really good job of screening and pre-assessment on folks. Has that process changed any over time?
It has, and actually it's getting a little more stringent. It changes periodically, and episodically you'll see those that process change. The Army Accessions Command is looking at that now to see do we have it right, and they're working on that to see who comes in the Army to make sure that we let soldiers in the Army who don't have such severe depression prior to coming in that they shouldn't be in the Army. Because frankly, it's like anything else. If it's so severe in any kind of illness, you don't let them in the Army. So it's the same for this. So we are looking at that. Always do.
And I've also been hearing more recently that unfortunately the numbers of suicides and completed suicides are on the rise in the military right now. Is there something that's being attributed to, or is that still being looked at? Or
we are looking at it hard. Actually, June was a sad month. I mean, June we lost, I think it was 32 soldiers to suicide in June, and it's not just active Army; it's Army Guard and Reserve as well. the numbers are up, and that is concerning. What you don't see is how many have not died by suicide because of all the work and effort going on, because our soldiers are under stress. I mean, they are. I mean, 2, 3, 4 deployments sometimes is tough. It's tough on families. So we are looking at that hard and doing as many things. You know, losing one soldier is too many. So we are working hard to do it. And frankly, I don't think we've found a common thread of why the number's gone back up. Because until June, it was the number of soldiers we lost in the year was about on par or less. The Army's done some good programs. A video program called Shoulder to Shoulder. We've had one previously, and there's another one coming out here soon. This matter of fact, it's coming out this summer. And what it talks about is it gives examples of soldiers that have gone for help and still been promoted and still gone to schools. It also talks of and highlights a soldier who helped another friend who now did not die by suicide, and that soldier has gone on. And I'll tell you, if we got a second, I'll tell you, we had a soldier in Iraq who had some depression, really having a hard time, was contemplating suicide. And some of the things he was saying, his battle buddy picked up on. So while this soldier was out of the room, his battle buddy took his firing pin out of his weapon. Later, the soldier came back in, left, came back in later and said, "Hey, were you messing with my weapon?" He said, "Well, yeah, I was. Why?" And he said, "Well, I just tried to kill myself and my weapon didn't fire." So this guy saw the warning signs and he did something. And in the Army, we use a thing called ACE, Ask, Care, and Escort. So you ask a soldier, are you thinking about killing yourself or harming someone else? And normally what we find is, and the myth is, if you do that, you'll cause them to think to do it. Well, that's a myth. In reality, if they are thinking it, they'll tell you that. And then you can get them help. So the care part is you talk to them, you listen to them. And then the escort is, don't just tell them, hey, you need to get some help. You take them to get some help. And in this case, this soldier took his buddy to the leadership of his unit, and then they got him into some care. That soldier came back to the United States, got medical care. Then he got promoted, went to school, got promoted, and then he was competed to be the Soldier of the Year at his installation. He came in second. So not only did his buddy do the right thing and helped him out, saved his life, and this guy's now doing very well, and they're both on that video that's coming out. So the idea is to show others, hey, help your buddy. That's a good thing. And the other one is, hey, if you're out there and your buddy wants to help you, let him help you, and then we'll take care of business. You know, we'll still let you go to school and all that if we can, and keep that going. So we're trying to get rid of the stigma clearly by this video, by real world examples of real soldiers.
That's good. You talked about active duty and deployed soldiers, but unfortunately in the situation with your son, he wasn't even deployed yet. Right. Is there a difference? Is there a distinction? Or is there more? Are there more instances in the field versus in the States? Or?
Actually, I'm not positive on the statistics, but I think about 40% of those that die by suicide have never deployed. I think it's around 40%. It might be a little higher than that. So about half have not deployed. So many say, well, it's all because of the deployment. Well, you know, what we're seeing is that's not necessarily the case. If it's 40%, that's a pretty high number that have not deployed that die by suicide. So there are other things going on in their life. I call it the crescendo effect. I mean, a lot of different things happen, and some people will say, well, a relationship caused it, or this or that. Well, I don't think any one thing causes it. I think that might be the last event that caused the crescendo in their mind to get so loud and so strong they just had to stop the music. And that's what I think our son did. I mean, our son was in college, getting ready to start his senior year, a lot going for him, was on medication. He came off the medication, and when he came off the medication, he didn't taper down evidently and do it the right way, and he spiraled out of control. And we had seen him 30 days prior. And took his own life, and he was a great young man. But I think they start feeling trapped. And I've talked to people who have attempted suicide before, and they've talked to me how they felt as they attempted suicide and what caused them to do that. And it's sad. My wife and I missed it. We missed the warning signs. We missed the warning signs, but we didn't know enough about it to know that you could die from this. It's not just a sad feeling. You can die from this, and if we don't get them help, they can and they will. So we've got to get people help. We got to get rid of the stigma, and we've got to make sure people know this is serious and it's real, but it's treatable. There's help out there, and there's hope. So please help, take care of each other and help each other. And I'll tell you, and I don't want to ramble on here, but I'll tell you, one of the challenges we got is people, they don't want to offend their friend by saying, hey, I think you probably need to see a psychiatrist or someone, because their friend might get mad at them. Well, do you want them mad at you for a while, or do you want them to die? I mean, that's kind of where it is sometimes, and sometimes you got to make that hard call and say, look, you're my friend, and I want to get you some help, and I think you need some help. I'll take you. I'll go with you. Let's go, and not just put them on their own, but take them. And to me, that's a powerful way to do it.
You talked about connecting people with resources as well. What are the resources that the people in the military have available to them?
Well, frankly, we have a lot of resources. Military One Source is one of the great ones, militaryOneSource.com, and that is what we're trying to channel everyone to, because there's so many resources. It can overwhelm you, actually, with all the resources. And I had this discussion this last week at a conference we spoke at on Sunday. If you go to Military One Source, it helps you, because you can from there they can spread you out and show you all the different resources. But the Yellow Ribbon program is a tremendous program the Army National Guard uses to help when folks in need out there. But in the Army, you've got any installation. You can go to any installation. We've got the ACE program out there. The Army has a great program called Comprehensive Soldier Fitness, to where we're trained Master Resiliency trainers. And we're training these Master Resiliency trainers at a university, and then they come back to the units, and there'll eventually be one Master Resiliency trainer in every unit, so that they can see it. They can help teach resiliency. They're also trained for half a day in warning signs of depression, so they can help identify this soldier needs to be more resilient, but this soldier they have a medical illness here. I need to get them some serious help, which is great. The other thing we do is we have mobile behavioral health teams now that we're using at many installations, to where as a unit's coming back from deployment, the mobile behavioral health team goes down to your unit area, which helps do a couple things. One is it takes access to care right to your local unit area, and you don't have to go to the hospital or someone else for the care. The other thing it does is it reduces the stigma. Just like you would go down the hall to see the administrative officer, or you'd go down the hall to see the chaplain, you go to see the behavioral health folks. We also have a program in the Army called Military Family Life Consultants, and these are civilians that are contracted that come in, and they just listen to soldiers. And you would think, okay, I mean, it's tremendous. They're in civilian clothes. They don't take any notes. They don't write anything down. You just talk and open up to them, and it's tremendous. Great feedback by the soldiers, a good program. There's another program now that's just started out. Our General Corelli, our Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, had this initiative and worked this with the TRICARE community. Tri-West, I think, in the Western U.S. Was first, and it's a video care. So you can get, it's kind of like Skype. You can get care with a trained behavioral health professional through a Skype on your computer. Young soldiers really like that, because they feel more comfortable doing that, because the stigma's out there too, and they're a little concerned about the stigma. And then the other one is you call Military One Source, and if you call Military One Source, you can get 12 free visits to a psychiatrist or behavioral health counselor, free, and it's anonymous. The Army doesn't know about it, and that's also trying to help the stigma thing, because we want to get people care. We generally want to get them care that they need, and if that's what's causing them not to get care, we've taken that away and said, look, this is anonymous. If you need help, you call this number and you can get help. 12 visits. So that's just a few of many, but you can see there's a lot of programs. And the challenge we've got now is we've got so many programs. How do we help people navigate this to really get somebody to help them? Because we want them to talk to a human and get help. We don't want them just to get a recording and all that. That's bad news. So. And
are you seeing that the programs are being utilized?
Yeah, they are. We definitely are seeing an increase. I know when I was at Fort Carson, our numbers for post-traumatic stress disorder, and I call it post-traumatic stress until it's a disorder, but on post-traumatic stress, we saw the numbers go way up. And what we found was people saying, oh my gosh, your post-traumatic stress numbers are really high. And I said, well, we've been encouraging people to come forward, and we think it's working because our numbers are up. Because we think they had post-traumatic stress before, they just weren't telling anyone because they were the stigma. They didn't want to tell anybody. They didn't want anyone to know. I had a session with a bunch of soldiers in the Warrior Transition Unit, which is a unit we have for soldiers that are injured and hurt. So I remember the first time I talked to them about post-traumatic stress and all that in a group, they're in the bleachers, like no one would talk about it. And by the time I left, a couple years later, I mean, they were standing up left and right saying, sir, I've got post-traumatic stress, and here's what I'm doing for it, and my friend helped me, and I got help. And I mean, they were very much more willing to talk about it and open up. which to me is very healthy and encouraging. And, you know, we just got to keep that momentum going so that they're okay talking about it. Because what you find is they can get over it. And the other great thing is thank you for all your Vietnam veterans out there that are watching. We've got a lot of great Vietnam veterans who I think have had post-traumatic stress, and they've been holding it back in for years because they had enough challenges when they came back, the way they got treated. And now I think what you're finding is they're seeing it's okay to come forward. So Vietnam veterans are coming forward with the VA more, talking about this and working through their post-traumatic stress as well.
Well, and you kind of went down a path there too. I was thinking generationally, because you referred to the greatest generation out of World War II, and almost nobody said a word about what went on over there. And then in Vietnam, we saw the experience of people coming back and not being able to talk about things and needing to. And now, are we seeing another shift? Are we seeing the ability for people to do things differently generationally? Yeah,
I think so. What we're seeing is no matter what generation you're from, they're coming forward now. They're feeling okay. And the Vietnam era, of course, World War II. Sadly, we've lost most of those veterans. There are a few around, but not many anymore. And but the Vietnam era is the big one, and that was just a tough time for all the country with everybody coming back. And but the good news is we're starting to see them come forward more. And then you're seeing young soldiers today really reaching out to the Vietnam veterans and talking to them and saying, hey, you know, we got welcomed home the right way. You know, you really didn't come with us, you know. And I will tell you, the Vietnam vets, they would be at every welcome home ceremony, every departure ceremony. They were, you know, they wanted to be a part of it. They said, we want to do this right, you know. And it's pretty powerful to see what they're doing and what the nation's doing now. The nation realizes it, and you know. And the nation's doing better. But they are coming forward to getting care, and the VA's doing some good things. General Shinseki and the VA are doing some good work. I got to tell you, the VA's huge. That's a large organization. Talk about taking the time to turn that ship. It just takes some time, but they are making some efforts at it, which is encouraging.
You can talk about outreach to families, too. How are you working in that circle?
Yeah, that's a great question. These families are incredible. I mean, you know, when you think about a soldier deploys, the soldiers deployed forward, they're in harm's way, but they know what's going on every day. The family is living back with the unknown. They really don't know exactly what he or she is doing every day. They don't know if they're out on a patrol kicking indoors. They don't know if they're in a watchtower. They don't know if they're on the FOB or off the forward operating base. They don't know. So the fear of the unknown kicks in. Plus, oftentimes they have kids, and you know we've all had kids, and the stress you can have just with normal everyday life with kids. But now with one of the parents gone, it just gets tough. And these families over and over. And remember, before they deploy, they're out training, so they're gone then too. So our families have been amazing. We've started some programs in the Army that have been very good. A couple places started a program called Army 101, and that is where they go to the schools and to the local law enforcement agencies and just talk to them about the Army life and talk to them about here's what's going on with post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury. So if you've got Billy in your class, and Billy was always doing pretty well, but all of a sudden Billy's not doing so well, or Billy's getting in trouble or arguing with kids, instead of getting upset with Billy and just immediately send him to the principal, talk to Billy and just ask him, Billy, is your mom or dad in the Army? Are they deployed? Or any service, frankly? Are they deployed, or have they been deployed recently and came back? And because what they might be suffering from is I call it secondhand post-traumatic stress. I mean, they might be reacting to mom and dad, you know, or to what's going on with mom and dad. So we are reaching out to the schools as well, but we are very conscious of the families, and there's many programs going on. General Lynch, our Director of Installation Management Command, is taking that on, as well as this is part of their comprehensive soldier fitness piece to also include our families. We want to make sure we're taking care of them. They're just amazing. And talk about resilient. Army families are Army strong families, or Army resilient families. I mean, there's something else.
I think another change that we've seen in more recent years is that there's a larger percentage of reservists that are called up into active duty and are on repeat deployments and whatnot. Is there a difference in how you approach working with the reservists and their families? Do you do different kinds of outreach, or is that kind of the same? Are they incorporated into the same models?
It is different. When we bring Army reservists and National Guardsmen on, when we mobilize them, they come on active duty, they've got access to all the same care and everything we have in the active force. But when they come back and they go off mobilization status, they go back to their hometowns and back into their communities. The challenge is how do we make sure they get care, follow-up care as they need it. So that is the challenge, and the Army Reserve, and General Stoltz is the Chief of the Army Reserve, and Major General Ray Carpenter's the acting director of the Army National Guard. They've done some excellent programs, along with all the adjutant generals, to include General Danner here in Missouri, to have programs to make sure we're taking care of our guardsmen and our reservists when they come off mobilized status. So wherever you are in your camp, town and everywhere, you can get into some care. A lot of them have centers now that they've set up throughout the states to where you can go in easily and get better access. They've done a lot of web-based programs, so there are a lot of programs. The key is getting the information out to them and getting them to use it and not feeling the stigma to use them. That's a challenge, but they're doing really good work. And I'll tell you, I'll just do a plug for our Army Reservists and our National Guardsmen. They're a national treasure, and our Army could not be fighting these 2 wars this long without them, without question. So, if you're serving in the Army Guard or the Army Reserve, thank you for serving. We absolutely need you. Your nation needs you. Your state needs you, and your nation needs you as well. And if you need help, call Military One Source, and they'll connect you to the right place. They'll get you to the right place in your state or wherever you need to go.
Bring this back close to home for you. What advice do you and your wife give to other people who may find themselves in your situation?
Yeah, we do talk to a lot of groups because we want to help prevent suicide. But we also talk to survivor groups too, those that have lost someone to suicide, whether it's a spouse or a child or whoever they might have lost. And this is a different type of loss. Losing someone, my dad died when I was 11, so I lost a dad. But losing a child is different, and to suicide is different than anything else. We lost a son in combat, so he was a hero. I mean, he stopped his platoon short of walking across a bridge because he saw something irregular on a guardrail on the bridge, and it was an IED strapped to the back of the guardrail. So he stopped his platoon, and he was calling into his platoon, to his company commander to report it. And that time somebody set the IED off with a cell phone, and my son was killed, and another young soldier was killed, and 2 Iraqis were killed with him too. The interpreter and a policeman were killed, but the rest of the platoon was not. So Jeff died, serving his country. Didn't have to go. The Army told him he did not have to go because he'd lost his younger brother to suicide 7 months prior, and they said, look, you've been through a lot of tragedy. You don't have to go yet. And my son said, no, Dad, I've got to go. So my son served. But then Kevin's death, our family and everyone was right there with us. We had so many people that were there. But death to suicide is different. Part of it's because of the stigma and the lack of understanding about depression and what it is. And many people think of it, why would you do that? Well, what we find out is they're not doing it to somebody. They're doing it to get out of the pain. And so we talk to families that are struggling. There's an organization called TAPS, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. And TAPS is a non-military organization that does wonderful work for those who have lost someone in military service. And they have not only do that for everyone, but they also have a separate suicide session. They've run a couple of those, and they bring in families that have lost someone to suicide. And Carol and I've talked to that group, and we've been a part of that group. And we go and we do talk to other survivors of suicide, military and non-military, because it is different than losing someone another way, and to help them know that your loved one died, suddenly. They died suddenly for a tough reason, and the guilt is pretty severe. I mean, my wife and I will always feel the guilt, even though people tell you, well, you shouldn't feel guilty. Well, you do. I mean, you missed it. I mean, you can make a lot of mistakes, but this is when we lost our son. We never can get him back because we didn't see it. We didn't know enough. So we really want people to know you can die from this. I mean, depression is serious and mental illness is serious, but there is help and hope. So get help so you don't ever have, we want the number of people coming to suicide survivor meetings to be a lot smaller. We want that, we want to prevent suicides. So anyway, we're trying, and we just thank people for the opportunity to speak out and help others know about it.
Are there things that people outside of the military can do to help either active or veteran groups?
I think so. One is just help get the word out. Help us get rid of the stigma nationwide. This is a national, I think it's a national crisis, but it's a national issue, not just a military issue. So help us in communities. If we help doing this in the communities, then it'll also help in the military. It kind of works, both ways. Sometimes the military starts down a road that the nation picks up, and sometimes it's the other way around. So if we're both working it from the outside in, the inside out, I think we'll get after it faster. So I just ask people to talk about it. Don't you know? And if you go to a party or some meeting and you start talking about suicide, just watch how fast people leave your conversation. They don't want to be around it. Oh, suicide, and they just they don't want to be around it. It's not a good topic to talk about. But the other thing, if I could, our son Kevin was a pre-med student. He had been selected to live in the German house. He'd been selected from his ROTC detachment to go to airborne school and had gone to airborne school the year prior. Was selected to go to Germany on a cadet leader program. So he had a lot of things going for him. But he focused on some things that weren't, his grades weren't as good as they had been. Well, that's because the depression. So I just want people to know, you don't fit this into a niche group. It's just anybody and everybody. It's not a certain group. They die by suicide because they're down and out. That is not necessarily the case. I mean, our son and many that we've met have not been that way. They had a lot going for them, but they kind of he was almost a perfectionist, and we didn't realize it. But I had someone tell me one time, Kevin was the kind of kid who we used to always sit down and tell him all of our problems, but we never thought to talk to him about his problems. I mean, he was just a real caring, compassionate kid. I guess that's why I wanted to be a doctor, But so I would just ask people, know the warning signs. If you see a change in behavior of somebody you know or a friend, don't just brush that off. Take it serious, because there might be something wrong, and you might not have much time before something bad happens.
General Graham, thanks for your time. And thanks for everything.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you doing the program.
And folks, thank you for taking the time to take this training program. We encourage you to avail yourselves of the resources that are available. General Graham listed off a whole bunch of them. That Suicide Lifeline's available to you all the time. So use those resources for you or for somebody that you love. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Tom.